I don't actually think that someone who's trying to be a truth seeker and understand what's going on and asked a question about whether or not Jews run Hollywood is an anti-Semite.
Alt-right isn't afraid to call out the Jews and their implications in the destruction of the black community in America.
People be sending me tweets like, well, Hotep is an anti-Semite. I mean, he said this and this. And I'm like, well, okay, but what do you mean he's an anti-Semite?
So it's like that inconsistency disturbs me, especially with black people, because I'm like, Jews do not like you. They hate you. They think you are... Can I curse?
Oh, of course.
They think you are shit.
The Mises Caucus invited this guy to headline one of their events and wanted to give him a paid recruiting link. Don't fall for Mises Caucus bullshit. Instead, tune into this episode of the Fakertarians podcast. Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 25 of the Fakertarians podcast. I'm your host, John Hudak, along with Jeremy Kantorowicz, Kevin Shaw, Archie Flower, one of my sock accounts, and our tech guy. Today we have on former Libertarian Party chair Nick Sarwark. Nick, how are you doing today?
I'm fabulous. How are you guys?
Good.
Doing pretty well.
So the question on everyone's mind, the important one, is: do you consider Nick Fuentes a fellow traveler?
I do not, other than I sometimes see Twitter feeds in my mentions where they're talking about Nick. And they keep talking about Nick. And I'm like, wait, that's not me. It's a different Nick. So in that regard, he may be a fellow traveler.
So we got a lot of different topics to cover today, but since you've never been on our podcast before, I want to go over like a bunch of stuff. So
for the ground rules,
whatever you want to talk about, honestly. Like,
okay.
Yeah, we don't do rules here.
Anarchy here, bro.
So I was going to start with the whole incident back in 2017 after Charlottesville with Tom Woods and the Liberty Against Fascism letter. Mm-hmm. So I was wondering, could you recap that a little bit for exactly kind of what went down for anyone who wasn't there?
Yeah, so the short version was at the Tiki Torch rally the night before Heather Heyer was murdered. There were a bunch of guys in doofy shirts chanting, "Jews will not replace us," and blood and soil, which were both phrases that were used in Nazi Germany, specifically targeting the Jews. And it's funny, when they use the phrase from Nazi Germany that targets the Jews to target the Jews, that is an acceptable Holocaust comparison. Most people agree. Anyway, so that phrase got used at Charlottesville, and I'm like, that phrase is not cool. People shouldn't use that. And I had seen a speech that Jeff Deist had given at a Mises Circle event, I don't remember where, in which he referred to blood and soil. He used the phrase itself in the speech, in the written remarks. The speech has its own problems content-wise. There's a few things I could go into if anybody ever wanted to talk about it, but he doesn't talk to me that much. But I pointed out on Twitter that there were two recent uses of this Nazi phrase. One was at Charlottesville, and one was on the site of the Mises Institute. And that got a little upsetting for people. But then a few days later, you had the open letter, Liberty Against Fascism, that somebody did. I still don't know who did it. Not that it matters. It's just literally like a WordPress site or a Blogspot site with an open letter from a bunch of people across the libertarian spectrum saying, hey, we don't agree on everything because we're libertarians. And so, of course, but we definitely agree that those guys are not us. And tons of people put their name on it. I put my name on it. People in the party, people against the party, people from conservative-leaning groups and liberal-leaning groups, and everybody's putting their name on this thing. And I gently chided Tom Woods, like, hey, if you have a problem with this, if you want to separate the Mises Institute from these jerks who are murdering people and chanting, "Jews will not replace us," you want to put your name on this open letter, kind of send a signal to your followers that this is not stuff that I'm into. And he used his freedom to choose not to, and to choose to do the Canadian girlfriend defense of, if you just listen to everything that I've ever written and wrote and talked about, you would know that I hate fascism, which is why I can't sign my name to this open letter. Because, you know. And that was the whole thing. And then a couple of days later, the Mises Caucus starts, and they name themselves after the Institute in Auburn, and they're primarily there to vindicate the Woods, Deist, Mises side of that argument over whether or not non-violent white supremacists or alt-right people are welcome to be libertarians, right? That's it. That's the argument, right? That's the core argument of all this stuff. And I'm not even sure that anyone would disagree with me from that other side, right? That's the argument. And that argument is one that we've basically been having now for almost 4 years. And it's the same argument. And we have it over and over and over again. And it comes down, like most arguments do, to a misunderstanding or miscommunication, right? Nobody's evil here. I want to get that out of the way. Nobody's bad. The miscommunication is different people want to do different things with the Libertarian Party. There are people who want to use the Libertarian Party to say loudly the things that they want to say with a platform so that more people will have to hear them. Because a lot of these people don't have a platform of their own. Nobody listens to them and their 30 followers on Twitter when they go on their rantings, but they're really sure that they're right. And so if they can just have bold messaging from party outlets, right, the national chair or the Twitter account or whatever it is, that's going to finally break through. That's how they're going to convince the sheeple to all wake up. And it's kind of like the party exists as an avatar or a super ego or an id for, probably more id, of these people's libertarianism, right? There's another vision for what the party's supposed to do, which is build a world set free in our lifetime by electing people to public office, by pressuring the people who do get elected if we don't win to change and adopt our policies, by being at the table in legislatures, lobbying against bills, convincing our normie neighbors that libertarians are a lot cooler than those two old parties, right? That's a different mission. Those are two different missions. And so what ends up happening is you have what Jane Coaston from Vox calls the thing adjacent problem, right? You're arguing not about the thing, you're arguing about the thing next to the thing. And the thing next to the thing is, should we focus on Austrian economics, or are social issues allowed, or, you know, all these debates that you have over messaging and do we try and make the bigots feel uncomfortable and all that. Those are arguments that are fine if we agree on what we're using the shared resource for, right? If we're all agreeing that we want to just be the megaphone for people, then we can talk about the argument over what we should be shouting from the megaphone. And if we all agree that we want to be electing people to office or having people testify or getting bills passed or referenda or all the setting the world free in our lifetime stuff, then we can have an argument about what messages and what work, what tasks best advance that thing, right? But the Libertarian Party has always had this split within it. And it's been called a billion things over the years. The original radical pragmatist split was this split. Right, that was the original radical pragmatist split, or not the original, the second wave, which was around like the Rutherford era, coming out of the late 2000s, when Mark Rutherford was vice chair. You're coming out of Dasbach. There's a whole bunch of stuff. At that time, the pragmatists were sort of the Aaron Starr, Mark Rutherford, Alicia Matson kind of people who wanted to do the politics of politics, right? Oddly, at that time, I was on the other side. I was a member of the Radical Caucus when it was reinstituted back in like the early 2000s. A lot of it had to do with the Bob Barr convention that did a lot for people, both ways. And I've just grown up, right? Like, I have kids now. I want to kind of get stuff done in the world, and I'm tired of yelling on the internet, and it doesn't change anyone's mind. So I don't like that kind of messaging. They do. They're bringing in a bunch of young people who are like I used to be. And their thinking is, these are people who've been kicked out of somewhere else. We're giving them a place to belong. They feel like they're doing work. We're giving them things to do. And then eventually they'll become not racist or not bigoted or not, you know, super right-leaning, because they'll just kind of grow, like I said, that Bill Weld grew by being in the Libertarian Party. It'll just from osmosis. They'll absorb it. And the biggest problem I have with that argument isn't that it's not possible, right? Daryl Davis is real. Things like that happen. The biggest argument I have is most of us didn't sign up for that work. right? The reason Daryl Davis is novel is that's really hard to convince a Klansman to give you his robe and stop being a Klansman. He's picked a very narrow path. This idea that everybody who joins the Libertarian Party wants to be Daryl Davis, it's not true. And what you end up having instead is a bunch of people get invited over to dinner. They get put at the table. They're in the restaurant. We're all sitting down. And then you're like, hey, I just want to tell you what the table manners are now. They're like, you didn't tell me anything about table manners on the way in. Do what I want. And then things go a little sideways. And you see this in the places in which they've taken over. They don't know what to do with the thing that they have. And I quipped on Twitter, and I'm going to stand by it because I don't delete my tweets, generally, unless they're really bad. That basically what happened was you had a bunch of people who were mad about the radio station but don't know how to drive. They stole the keys so that they could change the radio station. Good for them. Now the car's out of gas, and they're sitting and arguing over the radio station. And that's literally all they do. So more power to them. Sorry, that was a soliloquy. That's not much.
It's all good. That was nicely put. So does anyone have anything they want to chime in on that before I talk about? Because I wanted to stay on that topic and kind of go on to the New Hampshire convention, but I don't want to cut anybody off first.
I would
No, I'm good.
Or that if they're out of gas, which they pretty much are, then the battery's getting run down real fast with that radio.
There is an accelerationism to the thing.
Okay, so there was that whole thing, speaking of like the takeover and all that, and people wanting to change the radio. There was the New Hampshire convention, what was that, 2 weekends ago?
Yeah, I think so. 2 weeks. Sounds right.
So what exactly happened there? Because I know there was that whole thing about you running for treasurer or something like that, and they were all happy that you didn't get it or something like that.
Yeah, so basically, they did a lot of organizing. They recruited a lot of people. They've used tactics and methods. They have a signal group that's private. They have secure messaging where they talk to each other about what they're going to do. They also have some pretty good organizational discipline. They were doing the kind of, so some of these movements only exist because they're able to exist in their own bubble. So the Mises Caucus organizers came up from Pennsylvania, Heiss and Douglas, charming fellow. They came up, and he's their field organizer.
Yeah.
And they basically brought all their new members in who had been, having these monthly meetings and doing activities, right? And you have to give them credit. A lot of people aren't doing activities right now. This was an activity. A lot of people had a lot of stuff to do because the Republicans got shellacked federally. Some of the anti-mask stuff hasn't been so popular because we're kind of getting through it. Some of the anti-vax stuff is a little weird. And I say this as some family members who believe it. And so you just had a bunch of people at loose ends wanting to do something, and they had meetings that they could go to. So they all come in, but then they left for all the speakers, right? So they would all leave en masse at lunch to go eat lunch together and strategize. So they skipped Kara Schultz's really good lunchtime speech. In the evening, same thing. Tara DeSisto was talking about, how to raise money as a libertarian for your campaign or for your state party. Justin Amash was talking about localism and the ways that we can bridge the divide between the left and the right. And I think we're the only state that had Justin Amash as a speaker, right? Which is all credit to my wife, who was on the convention committee, getting that set up. So it was this message discipline of walk in, make the votes, walk out. Walk in, make the votes, walk out. Because then they only hear the version of events about what's going on from their leaders. And that is as they would like it to be. So they get through the officer elections. They tried a parliamentary trick to jam the officer elections before the lunch break, which would have actually prejudiced people who were going to come for after lunch, right? So they tried that. They didn't get the 2/3. When we get to the officers, they have their person for all of the spots, right? They've got their preferred candidate for chair, for vice chair, for secretary. When we get to treasurer, their preferred candidate, he had not been a member of the party long enough. You have to be a member for 6 months prior to the convention in order to be eligible to be an officer under the bylaws. He'd only been in for 4 months because they're recruiting a lot of people who are former Republicans or non-aligned Free State Project people who are just kind of angry at politics, right? And don't like politics. And that's kind of, I think, key to what you have to understand. The reason that some of the normal arguments don't work with some of these people is that they don't think politics is legitimate at all. So you get either the burn it down kind of people, or you also get the people who want to have the Libertarian Party be a very aggressive, right-leaning stalking horse for their Republican friends. So their Republican friends in the general court can then go and say, well, look at my reasonable thing. It's not crazy like those libertarians. It's the middle. And I'm just not down for having us be a stalking horse for other parties. That's a Max Abramson strategy. And they think it makes sense, and I don't think it does. So we get to treasurer. Their guy's not eligible, but we knew this 3 months ago. It was in the Facebook group, like, you're not eligible. So his name doesn't go in, and then they didn't have a nominee, right? They didn't have anybody they wanted. So a local activist gets up and tries to nominate Valerie Sarwark. And a lot of people applaud. My wife's very popular. And she declined because she's on the LNC. She's chair of the affiliate support committee. She's raising a ton of money. She's helping build affiliates around the country. And we have kids. You know, it's just, she's got a job, not enough time. So she declines. And then she looks at me and she says, you know, would you take the nomination? I'm like, all right, I'll take the nomination, right? Like, you know, I don't want the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire to not have a treasurer. It's a legal requirement. There's no other candidate nominated. I'll take the nomination. And it threw them all for fits because they were cool with my wife being treasurer. That came out later. They were like, fine, we'll have her on the board. When it was me, then it became personal. But it's always been personal. And that's why it's good we went over this history. This is Michael Heiss's project, right? Michael Heiss owns a PAC that's going to, if it is successful, take him all the way down the Ron Paul road. He will have control of a machine that pays him money to do his thing and say what he wants to say, to vindicate the causes that are most important to him personally. And he'll have a large mailing list that he will use to raise money by getting people angry, right? The primary use for political mailing lists or any fundraising mailing list, anger has the most emotional valence. It's a lot better than love. Well known in the industry. Read Ryan Holiday's Trust Me, I'm Lying. Like, all of this comes out of playbooks, right? And that's the most frustrating thing for me, I guess, you know, just as a good person, is if, or somebody who tries to be a good person, let's not gild the lily. If he succeeds at what he's trying to do, I don't think he'll end up being happy. I just don't. I think, you know, if you look at the arc of the former congressman from Texas, at the end of that road, you've got a bunch of non-winning campaigns where you inspired a bunch of people, but what do they do next, right? Who's coming next? Who's the next candidate? Who's the next leader coming up? And the problem with those movements that are organized around a personality is they can't outlast the personality, right? Ross Perot was the Reform Party, and when he withdrew, it flopped. Ralph Nader ran 3 times, I believe, as the Green Party nominee for president and got a lot of support for the Green Party. And when he withdrew, it flopped, right? You cannot build lasting institutions around personalities. They only last as long as that person has the energy for the thing. And that's why part of the reason I didn't run for a 4th term is I have other things I need to do, right? Like, if I don't have that energy to put in that effort, and someone else is going to take care of the party and keep going in the direction that we're generally have been going for the last 6 years, I'm happy to have somebody else be the face, because I care about the party more than I care about myself. That was basically the core of that Dave Smith Soho Forum debate, is as a party chair, you do the best thing for the party, even when the thing for the party that would be best is difficult or hard for you to stomach, right? If it gets too hard, then you resign. But if it's not so hard you have to resign, then, if they nominate a really bad candidate, you're supporting the really bad candidate. That's your job. Individual libertarians can vote for whoever they want. A bunch of them voted for Biden this time, a bunch of them voted for Trump the last time. Doesn't matter. And most real libertarians don't care, right? But what I saw here in New Hampshire was longtime activists, Free State Project participants who had had enough of the just bullshit, were like, I'm voting Biden. Trump's got to go. And they were raked over the coals, because what has happened here in New Hampshire is that a lot of the participants have had success inside the New Hampshire Republican Party. And they've gone from being opportunistic, which was the original Free State Project mission, right? Run Democrat, run Republican, run Libertarian, do whatever makes sense, get into the general court, get some laws passed, get some more freedom. They've had so much success on one side that they've started to believe and internalize that that team is better than the other teams. And that's a dangerous path, because both of those old parties suck. They just suck. They suck for structural reasons, right? There's lots of good people in both of them, but they suck. They're captured by special interests, and they've built up a system of political patronage where it doesn't make any sense to actually do anything anymore. It makes sense to be on the phone and raise money and let leadership take the hits and let leadership take the credit. And, everyone else is just a backbencher. That's why Justin got out of Congress, right? That's why he got out of Congress, is it didn't work. It stopped working. And it's a structural problem with both of the old parties, and it can't be fixed inside the old parties. So anyway, that's my soapbox. I'm off. Noda won. I actually had voted for Noda. I had written Noda on my ballot for treasurer. I declined to speak for my own nomination when given the opportunity. And the only reason I ended up voting for myself was one of the activists in New Hampshire who had given a speech supporting my candidacy because, I've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've run for office. I've been national chair. There's a couple of reasons why I'd be a good treasurer. I'm also treasurer for a nonprofit right now. So all that aside, I don't want it, right? I didn't want it. I did it as a favor to not let the party go under, but they saw it as, this is our chance to beat you, and beat you with Noda. You gave that speech for Noda in 2012, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, fine, there you go. I had a grin from ear to ear when I came back in. I was like, Noda won. I was like, what? No, that's terrible. I'm like, no, they got what they wanted. They did it. They did the thing. Now they'll all be happy. They did the thing. Don't brag about the thing, guys. You did the thing. And that's what you saw at first. They did the thing. Well, they did a bunch of shady shit after that. They changed the bylaws. They took a 15-minute recess, ran outside in the hall, figured out what they were going to do, changed the bylaws so lifetime membership in the New Hampshire Party would also make you eligible to be an officer. Then one of the board members from the Free State Project, who's taken an unhealthy interest in the Libertarian Party after never liking it before, wrote a $500 check to buy a lifetime membership for the person that they wanted to be treasurer, and offered to write checks for other people to buy lifetime memberships if anyone else wanted to get on all the boards to fill up all the spots. Then after they changed the bylaws, they had a new election. I obviously wasn't nominated, nor did I want it at that point, with this new guy, and he beat Noda, and he's the treasurer now. And then he sends me a link later, I wish we could have gotten off on a better foot. How can the foot be any better, dude? You literally were handpicked by Michael Heiss and collaborated with him in the hall, and then skipped our panel discussion with a bunch of people on Sunday that I actually moderated with, various political groups here in New Hampshire. in order to commune with Michael Heiss and talk about like spirituality. Like, I'm sorry, dude. If your best friend who got you to do the thing is a guy who has a personal vendetta against me, there's not a great foot we're going to get off on, right? That's just, I mean, I can be professional with people, right? I've had national committee officers that have not liked me before. That's usually not a problem unless they decide to make it a problem. But here's the deal, like, nobody's confused about what's going on here. And you can blow smoke to your supporters about how this all kumbaya and energy and unity and whatever. It's not true. And, you know,
Right.
who are you trying to bullshit here? Not me. So, you know, try it on somebody who cares. Anyway, the problem is that got me interested again in, like, these guys are breaking things. And so I've been on a little bit of a tear lately.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I saw you talking about because I was going to move next to the LP of Kentucky tweet, and I think there was something from the LP of New Hampshire too, with those new guys who did the thing. They had something about, I think they were comparing it to racial segregation or something like that.
Jim Crow drinking fountains. Well, actually,
wait. You mean my
little bit? Yeah, you've got the
hold on
the meme right there.
Let me get out of the way. There we go.
It's a little hard to see, but
it is a little hard to see. It's funny.
Sorry.
But what are your thoughts on that kind of messaging? I mean, I have a pretty good idea, but just for anyone who hasn't seen your tweets on it.
Is this before or after the hour-long call I got to have with Rabbi Litvin?
Honestly, either. I wanted to go into the Rabbi Litvin thing because I was.
So I don't like that kind of messaging. That kind of messaging is bad. Anti-Semitism is bad. I have Jewish family members, lots of them. I have family members that live in Israel. I have friends who are Jewish. I have people who are important to me where messaging like that is offensive to them. And so I don't like it when my party makes people I love feel unwelcome. That's not okay with me. Now, I don't control that, right? State parties get to do what state parties do. Leadership changes. They do the thing. But like with the Charlottesville thing, I can definitely tell you what I think of the thing, and I don't think good things about the thing. And I'm more than willing to have that discussion in public about the thing. And so that ended up with, we had the argument in the New Hampshire group, right? Because I still engage with them. And a lot of people there were doing the performative, doesn't look offensive to me. I know a Jewish guy and he says it's cool. Blah, 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 blah. And so I challenged them to just read that Courier Journal article. Read the responses from leaders in the Kentucky Jewish community about what they thought about it, right? What they thought. Because if you go looking for somebody from a group that agrees with your position, you can find that person. That's called cherry picking, and it's not intellectually honest. If, however, you ask a leader that group already has, somebody who acts as a type of spokesperson or at least a prominent voice, right? Don't get me twisted here. I am not a spokesperson for the Libertarian Party. I hold no official Libertarian Party positions at all, and it's glorious. But I think I have a decent voice, right? It's prominent-ish. And so look at what the prominent leaders from that community think about this thing, and then focus on not who's calling you out, right? Because a lot of them focused on, well, Sarwark's calling us out, so we must be doing the right thing, which is ironic and sad and karma all at once, because the reason I push back on bigotry and racism is because using bigoted or racist or anti-Semitic tropes or messaging makes it so that people from certain communities cannot hear your message. It is in the way of them understanding and coming to your side, right? So I don't like vaccine passports either, right? I am opposed to mandatory vaccination and mandatory vaccine passports. 100% totally opposed to both of those things.
Same here.
Rabbi Litvin doesn't actually like vaccine passports. He does not think they're a good idea. The thing about like government documents and Jews, they get a little sketchy, right? Over time. So everybody agrees, like this is an important issue. Let's talk about this issue. Hey, by the way, can you not put a giant offensive image up in my face while you want to have this conversation, right? Can we talk maybe without you having the big yellow star like in my face? Because it would be easier to have a conversation if there wasn't a big yellow star in your face, wouldn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
And then instead, they double down, right? They double down and they triple down and they go talking about it and they go beating it up and they do this stupid, I'm just asking questions. I don't know what the big deal is. Ooh. And so one of the things after I talked to Rabbi Lippman, tried to smooth things over as best I could, tried to at least send out the message that the majority of Libertarian Party members find this disgusting. It's some loud jerks on Twitter who have control of the keys and have some radio stations that they really want to turn up and are really blowing the speakers out. They don't speak for everybody, right? I'm very sorry as a libertarian for what happened, for what was said to your community, for how you guys felt. Right, that was it. It was just that expression. And he shot me a DM and he's like, I'd love to have a conversation. I was like, why not? So it was like 11 at night. We talked for an hour. And then the next day I saw Dave Smith doing Dave Smith things. And I kind of like started trolling him. And it's like, hey, you should really talk to this Rabbi Lippman guy. He's a good guy. He's going to engage you in good faith. He's not a bad guy. He doesn't hate you. He just wants you to know why you're doing this thing and why it's not a good idea. Or at least understand why he doesn't think it's a good idea. And so eventually the trolling worked, and him and Dave, they like got together. I was very kind about it. I wasn't trying to like beat anyone up. I was just like, you should talk to this guy so that you get his perspective, and then you decide whether or not you still want to go with that messaging after you've heard the perspective, right? You could have that conversation and come out of it and be like, nope, yellow stars on everything. I don't know how, but you could. But here's the thing. It's harder to do that when you're having a human conversation with another human being. Right? There are not a lot of people that have stones big enough to just say horrible anti-Semitic stuff to people's faces. There just aren't. Thank God. So they had this conversation on Will Fight's show, or David Fight. Which fight?
David. It was David.
David Fight, yeah.
I always get the fights mixed up. They had the conversation. It was a really good conversation. People were bringing in their experiences. They were talking about things that, Dave was talking about his Jewish background and stuff he learned. They were talking about, wisdom from the Talmud and the Tanya. And then, Rabbi Lippman's dropping Patrice O'Neill and Big J and talking about how everybody, that he's not opposed to jokes, even offensive jokes. And as he put it, everybody has the right to try to be funny. It's like, that's a good way to look at it. You get to try to make the joke. If the joke doesn't work, don't make it a second time, but you get to try. But what he pointed out to Dave was the thing that I had tried to point out to Dave those many years ago in New York City at the Soho Forum, which is it's different if you're in a comedy club than if you're running a political party that's trying to appeal to a broad cross-section of the community. Any community, but basically the 80% of Americans who don't go in for either extreme right or extreme left, right? Those are the people you're trying to appeal to. And as a political party trying to appeal to those people, you have to speak in language they can understand, and you can't turn them off. And you definitely can't go in with this philosophy of they're always going to hate us anyway. There's no point in trying to talk to them. They're always going to hate us. They're terrible. You should hate them because they hate you. Hate. Doesn't get you anywhere. So I'm glad that it's sort of sorted itself out. It's done a little separating the sheep from the goats as far as who's trying to build the party and who's trying to build their mailing list.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting conversation. I thought it was interesting how someone had given the rabbi a heads up on the Nick Fuentes and Hotep Jesus stuff. But
who argues with the rabbi and doesn't expect them to be ready? Do you not know how rabbinical school works? Do you not know what a yeshiva does? You literally spend every single day from morning to night arguing with other people. That is the job. That's the training. You think you're going to go out and be like, gosh, I've never talked to anybody. Boop-a-doop-a-doo. That's not how that works.
So, speaking of anti-Semitism in the Libertarian Party, I wanted to try to get your opinion on this. I don't know if you want to be fully open or what. Are you familiar with Hotep Jesus at all?
A little bit. Not very much. He's not my cup of tea.
So, okay. So if you don't know much about him,
I know the parts you know about him.
Okay. What do you think about Heiss and company wanting to invite him to headline an event and wanting to give him a paid recruiting link?
I'm not a fan, and here's why. Offensive people only bring in people who like offensive people or people who don't mind offensive people, if that makes sense, right? So those are the two groups that they appeal to, is actual assholes and people who are comfortable being around assholes. And so there is a deliberate Mises Caucus strategy to bring fringe voices in that cause offense and create anger because they feed off of anger and offense. That is their recruiting. They monetize the haters. They use the loser brigade, right? They are the people going and starting the new nightclub who go around all the other nightclubs and watch the people who just got bounced and kicked out. And they're like, come to our nightclub. We won't kick you out.
Yeah, I saw you making that analogy on Twitter.
So the thing with Hotep Jesus, I'm reading Tim Harford's 50 Inventions That Changed the Modern Economy, which I highly recommend to all of you. But one of them was penicillin, right? Antibiotics. And that came from a chemist who was supposed to wash his petri dishes and he didn't. And then the mold grew. And then he saw that the culture didn't live where the mold was, right? So penicillin, if you put it on a petri dish, creates a space in which the culture cannot grow. The Mises Caucus strategy is penicillin on the petri dish. They come in and make an environment that is counterproductive to the growth of the culture. And we had multiple members of the New Hampshire party quit the party in advance of the state convention because of the hateful and disgusting language that some of the new people were using. Name calling, insensitive jokes is not even quite to the level. Really just abusive bullying, because they know that every person they can get to not show up makes them look bigger. These are the people who think pissing in your yard is going to make theirs any greener, and it will not. But what it will do is it'll keep a bunch of other people from coming into the yard because it smells like piss.
Fair enough. Can't say I disagree with you there.
Yeah.
So for the this whole Mises Caucus takeover thing, do you think they're a real threat to take over the party? And I mean, either way, what can be done about it?
Recruit good people. You have to recruit good people. You have to go and find people in your lives, in your communities, in your neighborhoods, in groups that are not already libertarian, who like you and who like the idea of there being less government in the way of the things they like to do. And you recruit them one-on-one. You win hearts and minds around the issues that they have problems with government about. So if it's an entrepreneur, you hit them on taxes. If it's somebody that just wants to sell their jams and jellies, but the state won't let them sell them, you hit them on home cooking laws. If they just like to sit home and smoke weed, you hit them on cannabis legalization, right? You just say, look, hey, you're my friend. You're really concerned about this issue. I'm in this political party. We're actually trying to fix this issue. That other party that you were in isn't trying to do shit about it. Do you want to come to a meeting? Do you want to register to vote as a libertarian? Do you want to help me on a campaign? Things like that. Just bring them in. Recruit nice people. Because if you have enough nice people in a group, right, enough people, recruit considerate people, right? They don't have to be nice. They don't have to be all snuggles and rainbows and sparkles. Right? I'm not that nice sometimes myself. But recruit considerate people, people who can follow the basic courtesies of working in an organization with other human beings, which is you don't insult them. You don't go behind their back and stab them. You don't shitpost about them. You don't do all of these nasty things and then laugh it off as that's just how libertarians are. Toughen up, snowflake. Right? Like, that's only going to bring people who, as we said, either are assholes or don't mind assholes. Most people I know who've been successful in business, in life, in politics, don't hang out with assholes. That's part of why they're successful. So if they see a group that's full of assholes, they're like, that's not for me. But if you have a whole group of considerate people and the asshole shows up, they don't do very well. Unless there's been penicillin, and then there's detriment to the growth of the culture.
So, I would wish to disagree with you respectfully. This is actually the very same thing that the Mises people...
Just disagree with me.
The Mises people tell us this exact same thing. If you don't like what we're doing to the party, go out and out-recruit us. Bring in more people, and you'll beat us at our own game. But the reason I don't think that is sufficient is because one asshole in the room will chase out 5 reasonable voices. I've seen it in my own state affiliate. I imagine it's something like what's going on in these affiliates that are being taken over.
In
so
California? In LA County, you've seen that sort of thing happen?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's unfortunate. Look, it's not going to be sufficient to try to bring nice people in when it's harder and harder to convince them to hang out with these people.
We agree. So now you don't get to disagree. You'll have to come up with another wish. The second part of the strategy is you have to stand up to the bullies, because the other good people have to see that there are good people who have the stones to stand up and say, you don't get to say anti-Semitic stuff without getting called out. You don't get to treat women like a creep. You don't get to talk, nasty stuff about transgender individuals. Not in my presence, right? And that's the thing. We only control the presence around us, right? Some of us have a bigger presence. Some of us have a smaller presence. But we all control the space around us. One of the tweets that got really misconstrued from the other day was that, I believe that being unkind should carry a cost. And everybody's like, do you mean like people should get beat up? People should be taxed? You want to have a social credit system like China? I was like, no.
Saw that one.
I just believe that if somebody does something unkind to you, you can either extract a cost for that or not. And you can do it peacefully and with respect to libertarian ethics completely in a libertarian way. And you do it the same way I deal with my 2-year-old son who's upstairs so that I'm able to do this. His brothers and sisters aren't allowed to yell at him or tell him what to do, right? And he'll scream when he wants what he wants because he's 2. Now you see why I'm good at this whole chairmanship thing. He'll scream, and what I've told them is you can't yell at him, you can't discipline him, you can't hit him. What you can do is walk away from him and say, I'm not going to help you or talk to you or do anything for you until you can behave appropriately with me. So at whatever point you're ready to change your behavior, so it's appropriate for this setting, I will help you get what you want, right? Which is usually like peel me an orange or, wipe my butt because he's potty trained now, but not completely, right? We're happy to do that, but we won't do it for you while you're yelling at us. You're going to have to conform your behavior to the way we enforce norms and standards of behavior in our presence, right? So I'm going to use like a really, it's a tough example because of the work that I did and involves kids. And so, trigger warning for anybody who gets triggered. There are people who beat their kids, and I don't think it's right to beat your kids. The laws in this country allow some amount of corporal punishment in most states. And, there's a strong norm for parents being allowed to discipline their children in the way that they see fit. And like abortion, if you get the state too involved in those kind of decisions, the juice is no longer worth the squeeze because you lose enough privacy rights and you build enough of a security state apparatus to enforce the law. All the child protective services, kind of horror stories, men's rights people, what the problems are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a limit to how much you can do about what people do when they're at home. But if you beat your kid in front of me, we are going to have a conversation about that. We are going to have a direct conversation about that. And I'm going to explain to you why that's not acceptable behavior around me. And then you're going to decide which is more important to you. Do you need to beat your kid while you're here? Can you wait till you get home? Because if you can't, then this is a good time to go get home. And that kind of standing up is what not enough people have been doing. A lot of people throw up their hands and they leave. I'm not talking about the new people who might get run off by an asshole. I'm talking about people that I had respect for, and it wanes when I see them equivocating about shitty behavior. Shitty behavior is shitty behavior and needs to be called out more when it is exhibited by your friends than when it is exhibited by your enemies. And I would encourage everybody, no matter which side of the debate you're on, police your spaces first, and then move your locus of control outward from there. You police yourself, then you police your presence, then you police your spaces, then maybe we'll talk about whether or not you're allowed to police the goddamn party. But not before. You start with yourself first. So every one of you, all of you, be nicer. Just be nicer, right? Like, I made an ethical rule for myself that I'm now talking about publicly so that you can all hold me to it. That this year, I was a little burnt out on the conflict from politics last year. I was working a lot of political campaigns. Political campaigns are like trials. It's a lot of fighting. I enjoy it, but there's a psychic toll that it takes. So my rule for this year is I'm only making things better. That's why I've gotten into the maker movement. I'm, doing maintenance stuff at the science center. I'm building up some legal structures. I'm helping start a nonprofit for somebody. Like, I'm only making things better this year. And to the extent that I will interact with people online about issues that I care about, I will either say something that can benefit that person, can help that person accomplish their goals if I think ethically I can help that person. And if I cannot ethically help that person, I'm silent. And I'm always trying to be kind, which is a little different from being nice. Being kind is don't make comments that don't advance that person becoming a better person or advance you becoming a better person. Don't add conflict to the system, because if you're a systems thinker, there's a net amount of fighting in the system. There's a net amount of conflict. You cannot reduce that net amount by engaging in conflict. It is not possible, right? The math doesn't work. So you have to take the oxygen away from the mean people by being kind to them. And that's what made their victory taste like ashes. Because I went and did a long post about how it made me feel and what had happened and told my story my way about what happened, right? And it didn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. None of the bullshit that people do to me online feels good. In case anybody thought I didn't have emotions, I do, and I don't enjoy it. But I'm going to tell that story that makes me vulnerable about what it feels like, because they're not allowed to tell my story. And they're not allowed to have anything other than whatever joy this victory brings them, because they're not allowed to have me giving a shit about their stupid victory. That's what they don't get. You determine whether or not they get your reaction. They determine their own behavior. So work on yourself, work out from there. That's my lecture. Bet you didn't think I was going to yell at you.
I mean, objectively, not being treasurer is the greatest win of all. Fucking shit's a shitty job.
This is a beauty. My ethics require me to help the Libertarian Party and Libertarian candidates when asked. That's like an ethical guideline, a maxim for me. But I have sort of a reverse vampire rule. If you explicitly tell me that you don't want my help, I am now relieved from any obligation to help you. That's why I had the big grin when I came in. I'm like, they won. I don't have to do anything. They don't want me. I'll have to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for other people. Oh, joy.
Okay.
Come on, man. Buckle up. Have you done podcasts before?
Yeah, we've done
I
a
literally,
lot.
I only run for at-large and vice chair positions because those are the positions that I could just do whatever the hell I want. If you have to be treasurer, you have to work all the fucking time. You have to comply with rules. You have to interface with all that bureaucracy that we hate. So, yeah, who the fuck wants to be a treasurer?
Jail.
Yeah, that shit
Jail's
sucks.
only a thing for treasurers. Don't be the guy who has to sign on the lines if you don't want that responsibility. And maybe don't pick somebody who doesn't know what they're doing to pick it.
What?
Just saying.
I'll do a lot for the party, but I won't do math.
No math.
So what else?
I was going to say, since I've been monopolizing the questions, I wanted to see if anyone else had any.
Oh, geez.
But I can keep going. But
you got a pretty good handle on it, John. I'd say you pick another one.
I have a thought, because I think this is a point where Mr. Sarwark and I disagree. So I wonder, we've discussed this previously, where in California we had issues with individuals who were misrepresenting the state party, and I took a very strong position that we should have the ability to kick people out. And I think, I wouldn't wish to mischaracterize his arguments, but Nick expressed to me in Reno or somewheres that, he thought that was a slippery slope because, that power in the wrong hands, of course, can be used to purge left libertarians like myself or whoever. So I wonder, with this rising tide of people who clearly do not respect the non-aggression principle, who clearly have, hostile intentions towards the integrity of the party, is it not appropriate to have internal measures to police and make sure that people can't take us over? Because the assholes outnumber us. I mean, what do we have to protect ourselves from that?
So we do still disagree on this, and it's not because it's a slippery slope, right? A lot of slopes are slippery. Not all slippery slopes are the same. That's why you don't make Holocaust comparisons. So here's the thing. It's not that it's a slippery slope. It's that you don't actually want to have that power. That is like a root password on a system, right? Which is kind of like the computer science equivalent of being the treasurer, where you're the one that could go to jail. If you have root access, you are a person who can break a lot of stuff because you have the keys. So I always made it a rule during my IT career. I would not have root passwords. I wouldn't. I would ask someone else to sudo a command for me so that I never knew the password. I was never capable. Every time I've been an officer in an organization, I can't approve my own expenses. I have to ask someone else for permission, right? And the reason for that is, if you have the power to do it, then you might use the power. But if the power doesn't exist, then it can't be abused. It also can't be used, but it can't be abused. Not having a method for expulsion, at least at the national level, I think is still the right thing. States can do their own thing, but remember, any power that exists in any governing system should not be put in place unless you would be comfortable with your worst enemy wielding it. That's a rule for systems. It's not just governments, right? Libertarian critiques of power structures cross the political spectrum. You should not isolate them to just government. They involve any organization of people. They involve corporations. It's not magically because it's private that it can't be abusive of individual rights and liberty. So if you have an ejection mechanism, then people will want to use it because it's there. And that's what California's experience has been, right? California has roughly every I want to say 2 to 3 years, I see somebody is either kicked out or that someone tries to kick them out, and it burns a ton of time in the judicial committee. And then you get all these people who are like, well, we'll stack the judicial committee so when the appeal comes, we'll be able to get them, right? That stuff is bullshit. Just find nice people, bring them into the party, and then make the not nice people feel unwelcome, right? Ooh. That kind of peaceful parenting way of making them feel unwelcome, where if they behave inappropriately, you call out the behavior, never the person, right? This is a big one, and I want to lecture just a little bit again. You don't call people racists. You don't call people Nazis. You don't call them names, ever, 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 ever. It never helps. Never, 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 never. What you do is you say, that behavior is racist. That behavior is transphobic. That tweet is anti-Semitic. And then you make sure that you attach it to the specific behavior that the specific person did, because you can't collectivize groups. We're libertarians. We're individualists. The The caucus doesn't do anything. Michael Heiss does some things. Jeff Douglas does some things. The activists in your state do some things. And some of them, I'm sure, are nice people. But they're not sending their best. So you have to deal with them individually, because the good ones, when they see bad behavior be coddled by one group and stood up to by another group, will gravitate towards the good group. That's the actual Daryl Davis type of work, right? You give positions to people who are nice. You give them responsibility. You give them praise. You encourage their pro-social behavior. It's like me. I've never had a vaccine before yesterday, right? I put it out on the internet because I want other people to see good behavior. It's called virtue signaling. Look it up. It breeds virtue. So let's breed some virtue. You know, like my whole thing with LPI, which the site's going to launch here soon, real soon. I'm terribly slow at writing. Is this idea of like open source social justice warriors, right? Like there's a libertarian way to be a social justice warrior where you fix the structural problems in society, but you don't go to the government to do it, right? And providing those tools for libertarian activists to actually fix their communities, that's where my work is now, right? I have one political campaign because I really like him that I'm doing this year, but for the most part, I'm not seeking out clients, right? Like I'm happy to take your call, but it takes a lot to run campaigns or even just be an advisor to campaigns, right? Because I don't run them, I just help. But did that answer your question, Kevin? That's why you don't.
No.
It's like a
actually.
Cruise missile. It's like a cruise missile.
You referenced my state, and you say how much time we burnt with the these efforts to kick people out. You got to understand that those are a recent thing. That these are problems, institutional problems that have been there since long before my involvement with the party. And a few select individuals have been allowed to completely violate everything that it means to be a libertarian, and yet loudly speak for the party. These efforts were necessary and in fact healthy. We removed a convicted child molester from the party so that he may no longer have power or office within the state party. That was a necessary and uncomfortable thing to do for all of us. We all reject authoritarianism, but to say that we ought not have the power because it may be abused, I think that we need some limited ability to make sure that people who don't believe what we believe can't speak for us, because otherwise we do stand the risk of being overthrown. It's happened
You
before.
just made the argument for every weapon system that has ever been built by every military ever, right? We definitely need to have these terrible, terrible weapons of war because bad people will do bad things. The problem is, if you have a bunch of cruise missiles, then you got to blow some shit up. Otherwise, the cruise missile manufacturers don't have anything to do.
Does
That's
the same
why
hold true of firearms?
like pharmaceutical factories, right? Because you got to burn up some missiles so you have more missiles.
So do I have to go out and shoot somebody because I own a firearm? I believe in self-defense, sir. I believe that the party needs internal mechanisms to defend itself. That doesn't mean I believe in the rampant violence that you described.
You don't have to shoot anybody, and I wouldn't recommend it. It's a lot of paperwork. But there is a saying that if you see a gun in the first act, it will be fired by the third act, right? Do not have powers that you don't want to have used, because people use the tools that are there. So there are certain tools that I don't keep in my house. I don't have a plasma cutter in my house. I like a plasma cutter. They're a lot of fun. Like actually having the surface of the sun at the tip of your fingers is pretty cool. But they're super dangerous. And I just don't want to deal with putting in three-phase power and, the kids might touch it, that kind of stuff. So I just don't have those tools ready to hand. So is there an argument that there has to be something somewhere maybe? Sure. You know what I really like? Is if somebody gets a criminal conviction for a violent offense, preferably like a felony violent offense or an offense against another person, and they're part of, leadership, I think that's perfectly fine. You should drum somebody out of leadership if they're doing something that's embarrassing the party. But getting rid of individual party members is not a thing you want. You don't want that power. And I know that you feel strongly that what you did with that particular incident was the right thing to do. And I don't live there, so I'm not going to opine specifically on it. I'm just going to tell you that good that you believe was done is not worth the amount of abuse that it allows. That will be the end of my word on it. You can have the last.
I would only say that inaction represents our consent to the many members that were chased away by the toxic behavior of these individuals. And this, to me, represents a microcosm of what's now going on with the LPMC, is the people who are reasonable but gentle will be chased out of the room by the most toxic voices. And if we don't have a mechanism to say, you know, people who support anti-Semitic things don't have a home here, they'll think they have a home here.
You do have a mechanism. You have a voice. You don't need the power imbued in the party. The power is a you. You are the power. Somebody said that. Right? I mean, like, just use your own power. You don't need permission. You're a libertarian, goddammit. Speak up. Say, hey, you're a person that I don't think is representing our values. This behavior is not okay. What you're doing is not okay. Right?
And what when that's insufficient? And what when that's insufficient and they take over multiple affiliates across the country and my voice proves ineffective at stopping what's coming?
Ah. Now you've found insight. Work on the effectiveness of your voice before you start creating rules.
I have no say in other parties. Look, Nick, I can't control what goes down in other state affiliates. I can only do something here, and I did. I acted, as you said, in my own sphere of influence to do what's right here, and it was effective. I can't do anything about what's going on in New Hampshire. That's not my sphere of influence.
Very important to remember. Good lesson for all of us. Other topics?
Sure. So I wanted to give you a chance to address some of the controversies that have come up, like, because we get tagged and stuff like this all the time when we're talking about like bringing you on. So I think you
controversy.
So I think you touched on this a little bit before, or at least alluded to it, but the whole the Dick Cheney Hitler thing.
Yeah. What do you want to know about it?
Just because I don't think I've actually ever seen the clip. I just know it's always brought up, and it's always like.
It's always.
You should take a lesson from Rabbi Lipton and watch the clip before you do the interview.
That's fair enough. But I mean, I know everyone else always talks about it too, and I assume Dave Smith saw it and he brings it up all the time.
Yeah.
So I was just curious, like what exactly that was about.
It was an absurd hypothetical because Dave's position was, if a nominee is bad, the party should not. The party should not support the nominee. And I said, no, the delegates nominate the person and the party has to support, party officials have to support. And even if they nominate, and so he picked up Dick Cheney. He's like, Dick Cheney, warmonger, bomb brown people, blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, that's going to happen anyway, but let's say that candidate was going to end the war on drugs domestically. But he's still going to bomb brown people. It's like, yeah, but that was going to happen no matter who got elected, right? Because the Libertarian wasn't going to win. But if you elected this guy, he was going to end the war on drugs. You would have one war over by the end of the term. In that case, I think you vote for Dick Cheney, right? Even though you know that he's not a good person, the delegates, your fellow libertarians, elected him. They nominated him at convention. So it's the majority opinion of Libertarian Party delegates representing all the state affiliates, right? This is why they don't really want to talk about the hypothetical, because it's absurd on its face that it would ever be either a dead Austrian, because that's not legal, or an elderly Republican, right? The place where the party nominates Dick Cheney or Adolf Hitler after he's dead, at that point, the party isn't the party anymore, right? At that point, I've resigned because it's just not the same thing. But their simplistic view of the world is that I somehow control these things, that I don't know, have puppet strings and I'm a shadowy figure behind the scenes. And wait, I'm Jew. Oh, I got this. All right. So you see where they get this miscommunication. But in fact, the chair controls almost nothing in the Libertarian Party. It's all the delegates. You don't do anything. I didn't do anything. Now I do less. But that was it. That's the hypothetical. And so what they use it as is a gotcha. You said something about Hitler that wasn't like, I want to go back in time and kill him when he was a baby. Thus, you are anti-Semitic. Thus, you can't tell me I'm anti-Semitic. because I just used a yellow star comparison for vaccine passports. We're all the same. Nothing matters. Everything's wacky. That's why they use it. That's why it's the only thing they use, because in their minds, if you ever did anything, you get to be like, you know, shunned forever and tarred, because that's the victim perception they have, because they think the things that they've said online are not so bad and that everybody's just overworked about everything, right? And the way they build that idea up in their head is they find absurd things about people who are popular with the normies or on the 3x5 index card of acceptable opinion. And then they're like, but see, you said that one thing about Hitler one time, and so really we're just all the same.
Fair enough. I think that's a decent explanation there.
I like it. Yeah.
So the other controversy that comes up, I don't even know if I can call it a controversy because it just seems so ridiculous. But the idea that
to someone.
the idea that you're a CIA agent because something with Stratfor newsletter.
Yeah. So my brother-in-law at the time, he since divorced my stepsister, knew that I was into politics. I was, I think, going to law school at the time, and so I was into the world. I subscribed to The Economist. I'm like a giant nerd. I don't know if you guys know that, but I am a bit of a nerd. And so he thought Stratfor had this service where it was like open source intelligence, like Jane's Defense Weekly. If you're into the defense industry, Jane's is the thing. Economist has an intelligence unit that they do where they provide reports on what's happening in the world. Basically, it's like you have your own analytics firm, right? They look at the world and they tell you what it all means and synopsize it so you can make better decisions about investing or business or politics or whatever, right? That's what these things are. It's like people that subscribe to a Bloomberg terminal. If they're in finance, you know, you get either analysis or news earlier or better, and that's the thing. So he gets me a gift subscription. The gift subscription comes with some stupid book, which I'm not even sure if I've read, but I do have it somewhere in a storage box. And then 12 months of their newsletter, right? They send you an email newsletter, but it's subscription only, like a Substack for the modern generation. This is back in the mid-2000s. And so when WikiLeaks got all of Stratfor's files, there were Excel files that said, I believe the title of the one is gift subscriptions, blah, 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 time. And it's nothing but names and addresses of the recipient and names and addresses of like where to send the book, right? And it's just a list of gift subscriptions to their site. That's it. The Excel spreadsheet says on top of it, gift subscription. I publicly said, I got a gift subscription. That's why my name's there. And then that stupid article that bounces around, like these people have no ethics. So they're willing to keep repeating a lie over and over, including Angela McArdle, who keeps repeating the lie over and over. She is a liar now because she has been corrected. She's been told she's making a false statement, and she's continued to make the false statement. And if you elect a liar as a chair, you deserve what the fuck you get.
I think that's totally fair.
It's interesting. That's all it is just an Excel sheet of
If you go to the WikiLeaks link from that article and look at the source document, you can scroll through the Excel sheet. Right? It's like it's right there. The truth is right there. People who don't want to see the truth can keep themselves blind for a very long time. They can remain ignorant longer than you can remain patient. And so when you see somebody, if you're arguing with them and they have a sincerely held belief that they refuse to accept evidence about, that's a religious belief, maybe not within the strict confines of a religious belief in a deity, but it is a belief that they got without evidence and that they will continue to hold without evidence. And it's not worth your time unless you really care for somebody. Right? If you care for somebody, if it's your family member that's gone down the rabbit hole, then yeah, maybe you spend hours and hours and hours trying to help them get out of their dark place. But if it's some rando on the internet with an anonymous Laser Eyes account, it's not worth your time.
Yeah, I run into a lot of those.
I can comment on the Stratfor thing too. It's
that and frogs.
Stratfor is literally just open source intelligence that's assembled conveniently for you at a price. I have like fucking 24 throwaway emails I've used to get free articles from it. It's not spooky. It's
also not that good.
Yeah, it's not really great. But
I mean, they weren't that great.
No, it's pretty shitty, actually.
So,
Economist
no.
intelligence unit is worth it, though. I don't buy it right now because I'm not working in that space, but The Economist has always been, if you read The Economist, this is just a life tip for you guys. It's an expensive subscription. You can sometimes get specials. So weekly news magazine, if you read that, you have become psychic because you will watch the next week, radio, TV, blogs will all start doing the stories you read about a week prior. The Economist still has some of the best journalism in the entire world. And while their editorial line has gone in a direction I'm not super happy with, they're still really good. So that's your life tip for the day. Read The Economist. It'll make you a better person.
All right. So can you tell us a little bit about the Libertarian Policy Institute? Because I've seen you make some posts on that, and you alluded to that earlier, but I don't know a whole lot about it.
Nobody does because it's really going slow. It got kind of backburnered during the election and the convention last year because I had to do other things. But it's basically, it's a 501c4 nonprofit, so we're allowed to do issue advocacy and political advocacy. It means that our contributions to us are not tax deductible, although if I file enough forms with the IRS, we can do tax deductible operations. It also allows us to partner with 501c3s through a 501h election, where we can do advocacy for other nonprofits that are tax deductible if they're within the safe harbor. So there's the potential as we move forward, I might do some partnerships with some C3s that, they need somebody to be able to advocate or lobby or do something like that. But basically it's a place where I needed something to do after I was chair, and I wanted to focus on solving problems more so than the politics of the thing. So there's a bunch of articles up there from this last year. I think the COVID-19 one, went pretty good. It holds up well. It's from last April. And go and read the policy things and just look at it and be like, man, if we had done this stuff, everything would have been a lot better for last year. But we look for elegant solutions that can be done without adding to the coercion in the system, right? I was really struck by Chris Rufer's whole idea of, persuasion versus coercion, and that's the real divide in politics. So none of our solutions ever ask for there being more government coercion or more state, right? It's always a reduction. And it's usually in a way where we're trying to realign incentives, right? So like, there's an offhand one, there's not a full article on it, but if you tied the drinking age to the enlistment age, then either the beer industry is going to try and make it lower, or the military industrial complex is going to try and make it lower or higher. But then you have these two other groups fighting over it, and it keeps the system in alignment. It's like self-correction, right? So elegant solutions where you look at the incentives, you use the insights of public choice theory, you see what checks and balances used to work, you take your systems thinking, and then you write up policy proposals that can be used by anybody, right? And we're not just limiting ourselves to government policy proposals. There are policy proposals that you can implement in your own life, right? Things like personal production and open source manufacturing and trying to create a culture of entrepreneurship. Those don't need government permission. So that's what we're doing with that. You expect to see a lot more coming forward. I'm speaking at Freedom Fest. We're doing some more interviews and podcasts, and brought on Richard Manzo, my campaign manager from my county attorney campaign. He's going to be doing operations for LPI to kind of basically kick me in the butt and make me write more and faster.
Nice. I'll definitely be keeping an eye out for that.
Well, libertarianpolicy.org should say that.
All right. So is there anything else we haven't touched on today that you wanted to talk about?
Well, let's see. We found out that Nick wasn't involved in the 54
so.
Guatemalan coup, so we got that.
Yeah,
covered.
no, that's too bad, huh? You're going to have to find something else to say about me.
I don't know what Ice is going to say now.
Wait. Where were you on November 22nd, 1963?
Not alive.
So I think we can rule out that he's on the grassy knoll.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Kennedy was shot by Oswald, so let's not mess around with that stuff.
I know a conspiracy. I know a conspiracy about Nick that has never been addressed. The holes in his ears that the chair of California identified at the national thing. I remember, and we've never properly addressed whether or not you have holes in your ears.
That was the perception at the time.
They're hidden.
Everything is the eye of the beholder. But no, there wasn't anything in particular. I just, you guys reached out. I wanted to do the podcast.
Yeah.
You know, keep up the good work. Be nicer, and
I'll do my best.
You know, it'll help us win more, right? Like, this is a battle, right? I wouldn't have said the things I said on this podcast or used the language I used if I wasn't willing to draw some battle lines. There's some behavior that's not acceptable, and I'm not in an official position and don't have to kiss everyone's ass. So I'm not gonna.
Yeah, it's definitely a plus of that. So does anyone else have any questions for Nick, or do you guys want to wrap up?
I have a quick question.
I did. Oh, okay. Go ahead, Archie.
What 1 or 2 books would you recommend for a chair?
For chair, one of them should still be up here. It's Managing the Nonprofit Organization by Drucker. Highly recommend. That's where I get that line. Actually, you can see it's kind of commonplace marked on courtesy, because Drucker said, "A final don't tolerate discourtesy. Since the beginning of the world, young people have resented good manners as dishonesty. They think manners are substance. If you say good morning while it rains outside, you're a hypocrite. But there is a law of nature that where moving bodies are in contact with one another, there is friction. And manners are the social lubricating oil that smooths over friction. Young people always fail to see this. The only difference was that in my youth, you got slapped if you were not courteous. But we didn't feel like being courteous either. One learns to be courteous. It is needed to enable different people who don't necessarily like each other to work together. Good causes do not excuse bad manners. Bad manners rub people raw. They do leave permanent scars. And good manners make a difference." So that one's a good one. I recommend that one. And for a chair, well, what are your chair problems? What are the challenges you have as a chair? Is it money? Is it organizing? Is it candidate recruitment? What is it?
All of the above.
Okay, so for raising money, Michael Cloud's old video on like raising the first $10,000 for your campaign is still a classic in the genre. If you get past that, there's a fundraising book that Joe Bishop Henchman recommended to me, which is hard to find because there was a schism at the organization, but it's called The Artful Journey, Cultivating and Soliciting the Major Gift. This one's really good for fundraising. It talks about donor stewardship, things like that. It was by Sturtevant, Sturtevant. I would recommend that one as well. And those two, if you kind of digest the things in there, you'll do a lot better. There was somebody else who had a question too.
I think it was our tech guy.
Me.
Go ahead, tech guy.
We had talked a lot about virtual signaling and how it's good because and like I totally related to that when it came with the COVID vaccine. Unfortunately, every single time, both times I had the COVID vaccine, I got very sick. So I was kind of worried that if I told people, yeah, get the COVID vaccine, you feel like crap for the day after, but it's only lasts like a day after that. So you're good. So I didn't really say anything, but I did want to ask, I really should have. I should have been
because
listening.
It demystifies it, right? Anti-vax propaganda depends on mystification. It's always something nebulous. Something could happen. Something might happen. You never know. Nobody's tested it. We don't know. We don't know. It's a kind of epistemic nihilism. We can't know anything about anything. And so if you share your lived experience, this is what happened to me. This is it's my story. If enough of us share our stories, our lived experience, it demystifies it. Because you're a person they know. You're not some shady government operative. Like, you're not me, with all these CIA rumors. At least I hope not.
But what I worry about is someone taking that out of context, being like, yeah, I felt really sick the day after, but I was fine afterwards. And I think someone would really focus on, oh, they were sick the day after, which means it's horrible. It's terrible. It makes you sick. So
there's a skill to that. It's part of the reason that I'm so laconic online. And laconic, for those who don't know, it's a $5 word. It refers to the Spartans, and the Spartans were always very short with their words. They didn't say much, right? They let their actions talk. But being laconic and being brief, brevity, also means that you expose less surface for miscommunication, right? So rewriting what you write or practicing for an interview thinking about what you say, where you carefully figure out what's the way I can say this where my worst enemy takes this tweet and tries to misconstrue it. And how can I build it to be bulletproof, where there's no way to get me out of context, right? That was my debate error in the Soho Forum debate with Dave Smith, is I gave a soundbite that in context makes a lot of sense, but the bite itself could be cut down, and one of the prime ministers of Israel had a famous thing. Somebody in my comments told me about it. It's apocryphal. I don't know if it's real, but he would ask the interviewer, how much time is in the segment for my piece? The interview would be like 30 seconds. And he would talk to that reporter for exactly 30 seconds. Because then they can't edit it. There's nowhere to go, right? So tell your story. Tell it in long form if it needs the long form, or if it's going to be in short form, pare it down until it's just a statement that you can 100% like plaster on your front door, print in the New York Times, and you're like, yeah, that's what I said. It's just good rule for life. But was there more question there? I'm sorry if I...
Yes. I did want to ask, we were talking a lot about virtue signaling, which I do think is good. You should tell people to do good things. But we have had kind of a movement in people who like to virtue signal in the opposite way.
Vice signaling.
Vice signal, yeah.
And what do we do when people start vice signaling virtue signaling, or how did you handle that?
What you do is you call out the unacceptable behavior, right? If you are making a performative an effort to show that you're going to like haze people in with edgy jokes or spicy memes, right? Mm-hmm. Then you just say, look, that isn't appropriate in this space, right? Because there are meme groups for that sort of thing. But if it starts to drift into like real party functions, you have to just call it out and say, like, that's not appropriate to say, right? And yes, the bullies are going to attract people who either like bullies or wish they were bullies. And so they show their virtues and we show ours. And then, one of the things I like to do is just shine a light on people who seek this kind of negative attention. Like my 9-year-old, he has some trouble with outbursts at the table. And so, I talked to him. I said, why did you just say that? Why did you say what you said? He was like, I don't know. I was like, were you trying to get attention? Like, yeah. I was like, is this the kind of attention you wanted to get at the table? Was this the attention you wanted? Did you want this attention where everybody's looking at you and where you're going to have to go sit in timeout? Like, is that a good choice you made? And that has helped correct behavior a lot better than increasing the conflict, right? You let the person have the attention, but it's the sort of attention they don't really like. The other day, there was somebody who decided to like blame me for his Twitter account getting suspended and then post about it on Facebook and then tag me. And then I just copied his post and shared it and said, this is what this guy thinks is cool to do. Use a bunch of nasty language and blame me for all of his problems for getting his Twitter account hacked. And then he got a lot of attention. And then the post disappeared. And I think he may have either blocked everybody or deleted his account. I don't know if you've noticed, but when some of these missteps occur, the thing they like the least is attention paid to the exact words they said, right? This is a cross-examination, free legal education for some of you. You can never cross-examine with a paraphrase. It can never be your words. It has to be the specific words of the other person, and they have to be presented in the context that they were, so that you can't be looked at as playing tricks. But some of these words that people have said, they really don't like to see again. So that's my advice on that. Just make your signal shine brighter. Also remember that undercutting signaling theory is the idea that it's more like the marble in front of banks, right? Banks don't need marble columns. but marble columns prove that you have enough money to buy marble columns. So true signals have to be harder to fake, right? Because otherwise people just lie. It's easy to say you're virtuous. It's harder to show like your actual vaccine injection site. And that's why it's important for those of us who are going to get the vaccine to tell our stories about the vaccine so that people who know us see what we're doing. And they also see how we respond to people who give us shit for getting the vaccine and call us sheep, right? And if you lash out at those people, you're not going to help anybody. You have to be kind to them too, even when it sucks.
Fair enough.
I agree with that.
So, Nick, do you have any closing thoughts or anything before we wrap up, or do you just want to go to it?
No, just be good to each other, right? Like, remember, we're all trying to make the world better, even some of the people who are in caucuses that do some bad things. You know, you always assume grace with people. You try to be nice. Try and also remember that this last year, a lot of people have gone into a really dark place because they're scared. And you can't fight them out of a dark place that they went to because they're scared. You have to make them feel not scared. You have to show them what the light looks like. You have to show us having fun out in the light. And then when they catch back up to you, when they're ready to behave appropriately, when they're ready to get down to the work that we actually want to do together, then be nice, even if they were mean. Sometimes, though, they do have to change the behavior first, right? That's kind of a rule. Forgiveness is your own, but reconciliation requires both sides. Does that sound right?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
so you guys
definitely.
keep doing good work. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry if I crossed any lines with you, but
No, you're fine.
Oh no.
It was great having you on and listening to you, soaking in all your wisdom from all your experience. So definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, and if there's ever anything you guys need that I can help you with, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm easy to find, either a consulting company or the Policy Institute, or you just find me on social.
All right.
On that note, can we get you to endorse Food Act 2024?
What?
No. I'm not doing any 2024 political endorsements right now. But thanks for asking.
I don't think I'm running for anything, so.
Well, now I'm endorsing you.
All right. Well, now we've got it.
All right. Well, thanks again to Nick for coming on, and we'll see everybody else in 2 weeks.
All right. Bye.
See everyone.
Bye, guys.
Buy shirt, get money. No, other way. We get money. You send money, we get shirt.